Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into how a blind kid from London unlocked one of the toughest puzzles in all of jazz history, and in the process, created a completely legendary, unmistakable sound. We're going to explore the life, the absolute genius, and the sheer acoustic ingenuity of George Shearing. Let's get right into it. You know, George Shearing once famously said that the real trick to jazz is getting the music out of your head and into your hands. And honestly, every jazz musician shares that exact same goal. But beyond just playing the right notes, the ultimate quest is to produce a sound that is instantly recognizable as yours. I mean, just a few notes, and you immediately know you're listening to Louis Armstrong or Coleman Hawkins, right? But achieving a completely original and unique sound on a piano, well, that is notoriously difficult. Think about the inherent physical limitations of the piano for a second. While horn players, think Miles Davis or Chet Baker, can effortlessly bend, shape, and soften the tone of their instruments to create this mellow, almost whisper-like sound, the piano is, well, it's literally a percussion instrument. Once you hit that key, the attack is rigid. There's no bending it. So creating a uniquely sustained, almost orchestral blend on a percussive instrument like the piano, that requires absolute genius. Part 1. A Kid from Battersea. Before he could revolutionize the jazz landscape, Shearing had some immense obstacles to overcome. Born blind in 1919 to a working-class family in Battersea, London, his musical spark actually ignited really early. He'd just pick out radio tunes on the family piano. And get this, he had absolutely no formal training outside of studying Braille music. After years of grinding it out, playing in local pubs, and joining an all-blind band just to support his family, he finally packed up in 1947 and moved to America to chase his ultimate jazz dream. Part 2. Anatomy of the Sounds. Once he was in America, Shearing relentlessly experimented with his newly formed quintet. He was absolutely determined to give that percussive piano a sustained orchestral blend. To solve this acoustic puzzle, he perfected what's known as the locked hands block chord technique. Now, this chordal approach was actually originated by pianist Milt Buckner, but Shearing took it to a whole new level. It was harmonically much more complete. It allowed him to harmonize a melody into rich, four-part blocks while moving his hands together at just incredible speeds across the keys. He essentially built what we could call a Shearing wall, literally outsmarting Phil Spector's famous wall of sound decades before it even existed. To completely fill out that sonic space, Shearing played the main melody on the piano, while the vibraphone perfectly doubled his upper note an octave higher, and the guitar doubled his lower note an octave lower. It's like a giant musical sandwich. And the result? Absolute magic. Jazz critic Dick Katz pointed out that this specific octave unison voicing simulated the lush, sustained reed sections of the old Glenn Miller big band. By sandwiching the piano right between the ringing sustain of the vibraphone and the warm pluck of the guitar, Shearing completely masked the piano's rigid limitations. He literally made a small five-piece band sound like a massive, beautifully blended orchestra. Part 3. The Golden Era. This technical breakthrough wasn't just some niche, critical success. It catapulted him straight from smoky jazz clubs to global stardom. In 1949, the group was signed by MGM Records, and at their very first session, they recorded a track called September in the Rain. Well, it was an absolute smash hit. It sold a staggering 900,000 copies in that year alone. That's almost 1 million records. It officially announced to the entire world that the Shearing Sound had arrived. This massive hit launched an incredible 20-year run for the quintet. Along the way, Shearing composed over 300 original pieces, including the definitive bebop anthem Lullaby of Birdland. And his creative fire, it never faded. Shifting to straight-ahead jazz in the 1980s, he even bagged 2 Grammys later in his career with the great vocalist Mel Torme. Part 4. A Fluent Musical Ear. Now, it's really important to understand that the Shearing sound wasn't just some rigid gimmick. It was fueled by an auditory processing ability that left his fellow musicians in absolute awe. His ability to listen, replicate, and actualize almost anything he heard was just impossibly acute. Dick Katz summed it up perfectly. He said, Shearing's true creativity was sometimes almost obscured by just how good his ear was, joking that, to use a musician's phrase to describe a colleague with a good ear, George can hear paint dry. Because of this supernatural ear, he wasn't just a walking jukebox. He was like someone who spoke a dozen languages fluently. He effortlessly translated swing, classical, and bebop directly to the keyboard. But he also deeply loved Latin jazz. Highly influenced by Cal Tjader in the 1950s, Shearing actually brought the mambo craze right into his quintet, expanding his sound with legendary percussionists like Willie Bobo on timbales and Armando Peraza on congas.
Part 5, An Enduring Legacy.
George Shearing passed away in 2011, but the sheer gravity of his musical innovation, it continues to ripple through jazz today. We still see his direct influence alive and well in contemporary music. For example, on a recent album by British-born bassist Orlando LaFleming, there's an all-acoustic track titled Gardening Shearing Blues. It's a genuine blues built entirely on Shearing-inspired block chords, which just goes to show exactly how modern artists continue to study and honor his harmonic architecture. Looking back at his incredible journey, Shearing himself summarized it best. He reflected on his life and said, "So the poor, blind kid from Battersea became Sir George Shearing. Now that's a fairy tale come true." I mean, think about it. Through sheer ingenuity, a kid with no formal training, outside of Braille music that is, reinvented his instrument, earned himself a knighthood in 2007, and left a recorded legacy that forever enriched both the jazz community and the public at large. So I'll leave you with this final thought. The next time you hear a piano playing, really pay attention to the attack of the keys. Try to imagine the boundless creativity and, frankly, the perfect ear it takes to make a striking, percussive instrument sing like a perfectly blended orchestra. That, my friends, is the true magic of the Shearing Sound. Thanks for hanging out with me for this explainer, and keep your ears open.